Story 1. 5 days ago, I shared a story about the time a man under the influence hit me, a 12-year-old, over some cheap wine. Since that story left many people upset and frustrated with humanity, as if we didn't already have enough reasons, I've been trying really hard to find a more positive, I don't work here lady story to share with you all. Finally, thanks to a vacation anecdote from a German friend, I remembered this one. The "I don't work here lady" part is short. I won't mind if the moderators feel like redirecting me to another sub or removing the post. There's a brief summary at the end. Also, English is my second language, and I'm on mobile, so please excuse any formatting issues. Don't hate me. When I was 16 years old, I was staying at a hotel with my parents and younger brother. It was around 8:30 m.e., and my parents had gone to the beach with my brother, while I stayed behind in the main lobby, reading a book because I wasn't too fond of the sun. The front desk employee told me that if anyone asked for him, he had to step out for a quick bathroom break, and then he left through the office door. A few minutes later, a small boy, who couldn't have been older than 6 or 7, came from one of the hallways. Small boy, are you the cleaning lady? Me, no, I'm just staying here. Small boy, where is the cleaning lady? Me, the cleaning and maintenance staff usually start on the highest floor and work their way down. Where are your parents? Small boy, my dad is at home. In Spanish, padres means parents, but it can also mean dads, which I thought was interesting. Me, and your mom? Small boy, mommy left and told me to wait for the cleaning lady. The cleaning lady is supposed to take me out of the room and make it clean. Looking back, his speech patterns seemed a bit broken for his age, but at the time, it just sounded really cute. It became clear that his mother didn't plan to return for at least a couple of hours. I asked the boy what his name was. Let's call him Timmy for privacy, and how old he was. He said 5.5. I also asked if he remembered what room they were staying in. He told me they were in room 8, so we headed there, but the door was closed. It was likely someone noticed the door open and closed it on their way to breakfast. No one answered after I knocked heavily. I could have just left the issue to the front desk to handle, but the kid was too adorable and sweet for me to leave him like that. So I quickly ran up to my room, left my book, grabbed a couple of plush toys we had bought at the aquarium, and hurried back to the lobby. I sat the boy down on the couch where I had been sitting. Me, okay, Timmy? I'm going to see if I can find your mom. She didn't tell you where she was going, right? Small boy, she just said she was leaving. Me, and she wasn't with anyone else. Small boy, no. Me, all right, stay here and play with these plushies. If you behave, I'll buy you something from the vending machine when I get back. Small boy, can it be the chocolate bar with strawberry yogurt filling? Me, you sure know how to pick your snacks. All right, I'll be back. I went out to search for his mom. I checked the breakfast area, stepped outside to visit the newspaper stand, the pharmacy, a few nearby restaurants, and clothes shops. But there was no sign of any woman looking for a 5-year-old named Timmy. When I returned, the front desk employee had come back. I explained the situation to him, and he called the hotel manager who was on his day off because leaving a child without informing the staff was against hotel policy and potentially illegal. The manager said they would speak with the mother the next day, and if she didn't respond, they would call the police. Meanwhile, the front desk employee and I kept the boy entertained. My younger brother joined in when my parents returned. We played with Timmy for the rest of the day until just before 8 p.m. As the sun was setting, a tall, tan young woman walked in, wearing a small bikini. Small boy, mommy. Bikini woman, hey there, kiddo. Why are you outside the room? Didn't the cleaning lady take care of you? Front desk, miss, is this your child? Bikini woman, yeah. Front desk, this isn't a daycare. You can't just leave your son alone and expect us to take care of him without saying anything. Bikini woman, oh, get lost. I'm sure your cleaning lady is just some worthless immigrant who's had enough kids of her own to know how to take care of mine. She made an offensive remark, stereotyping certain immigrant workers who often take lower-paying jobs. Front desk. First, none of our cleaning staff are what you just described. Second, their job is to clean, not to run a daycare. And third, if you continue to insult my staff, I'll have the police evict you. With that, Bikini Woman stormed off to her room. The little boy gave both me and the front desk guy a hug before running after his mom. He even got to keep the plush toys since my little brother didn't mind. The next day, the manager made the mother pay a significant extra fee to avoid having the police called on her. After a brief shouting match, she grudgingly paid up. As much as I would have loved to see the police get involved, the front desk employee's hands were tied. Yes, he pulled a 16-hour shift followed by his usual 8-hour one with only 8 hours of rest in between. Definitely the unsung hero of the story. Story 2. It was an eventful morning at the beginning of last week. I started up my truck, waking everyone up at 2:45 a.m., only to discover someone had stolen the hollowed-out catalytic converters. However, the culprits made a major mistake. They overlooked the neighbors' cameras, which clearly revealed who they were. It turned out to be 2 kids from the neighborhood who were driving around in a severely beat-up old police car, specifically a worn-out Crown Victoria. Rather than immediately calling the police, I contacted one of my friends, who works in code enforcement. I informed him of my plan, and he passed the information on to the police, letting them know that I intended to finally carry out a nuisance tow on the Crown Victoria. The car these kids drive isn't roadworthy. It has no license plates, no insurance, no working taillights, and rattles terribly due to the cheap, malfunctioning sound system. They spend most of their time hanging out at a chicken restaurant, smoking. I'm not sure where they're getting their money, but it's likely that stealing catalytic converters was part of the picture. When I spotted the car parked on a quiet street, I called it in and received the go-ahead to tow it. I took the car straight to the police station. They ran the vehicle identification number only to find out it hadn't been registered since 2011. The registered owner wasn't even one of the kids driving it. Someone else had sold them the car without a title due to unpaid back registration fees. The police gave us the green light to take the car to the junkyard until they could issue a certificate of destruction, often referred to as a black title. By this time, the 2 kids were frantically driving around town, thinking one of their friends had stolen the car. As a prank, the key lock was so worn out that you could start it with any car key. They eventually found the car at the junkyard and tried to steal it back. One of them distracted the junkyard owner, while the other attempted to take the car. Fortunately, the junkyard was already aware of who they were, so they preemptively disabled the car by cutting off the driveshaft. I missed out on that part, but I later found out that the 2 were arrested for attempting to steal their car back. They had to watch as the junkyard used a crane to tear the car to pieces. By the time I saw it, the remains looked as though a toddler had ripped it down to the bare frame out of sheer curiosity. The 2 have since been released from jail, but they've stayed inside their trailer ever since. I recently drove by and noticed an old, beat-up Jeep Liberty in their driveway, also without plates. I'm already working with the police to handle that vehicle too if I see it out in public. Next time, though, I won't miss the action. Story 3. It all started on Sunday, May 26th. I was flying back home from Texas, where I had attended my girlfriend's sister's wedding. We had a layover in Las Vegas before our 1-hour flight back to Sacramento. As soon as we landed in Las Vegas and I got cell reception, I received a call from my roommates. They told me that the gate to our backyard had been busted open and my beautiful husky wolf mix was missing. That dog meant everything to me. She was 3 years old at the time, and I had her since she was just 2 months old. She had been with me through all my breakups, job losses, and even evictions. She was my only friend when everyone else turned their backs on me because of the rumors my ex had spread. When I got home, I immediately started the usual process, putting up flyers, offering a reward, and notifying every animal shelter, vet, and the microchip company about her disappearance. I posted notices on every lost and found page, and soon the story started to go viral on social media. A lot of people were eager to help me find my dog, and I had eyes everywhere. One morning, I woke up to a message from a friend who had found a Craigslist ad showing a photo of an unknown girl hugging my dog. The ad was titled, "Found Husky." I immediately contacted the person who posted the ad. The woman was very kind and explained that she hadn't found my dog herself, but a friend of hers had. She told me that her friend had posted pictures of my dog on social media, bragging about how the universe brought me this beautiful pup. She sent me screenshots of her friend's posts on social media, along with all the photos of my dog. Then she added, "I don't know her personally, but she's a fellow escort." It turned out that the girl who had my dog was an escort. The woman who posted the ad reached out to the girl to inform her that she had found the dog's owner. But instead of doing the right thing, the girl deleted all the posts about my dog and blocked the ad poster. I thought to myself, all right, this has already gone viral. Game on. I gathered everyone who had been helping, including my aunt, who happens to be a detective. We started a search. I filed a police report, and the authorities were willing to take action. But I had to find where she was keeping my dog for them to intervene. This made things a bit tricky. We began gathering information and soon found out her legal name, addresses she was tied to, and even the names of her boyfriend, mom, stepdad, dad, and stepmom. We also discovered that she had 2 outstanding warrants for petty theft, a hit and run involving property damage, lying to an officer, and possession of illegal substances. With all this information in hand, including her being an escort, which is illegal where I live, we had enough to take action. I dug up even more info, like her email addresses and phone numbers, including the number she used for her escort business. I decided to call her to confront her. As soon as she answered, she started yelling at me, accusing me of harassment and threatening her even though this was the first time I had ever spoken to her. She also claimed she had taken my dog to a shelter 2 days earlier and even mentioned which one. I checked, and of course, it wasn't true. Meanwhile, I was gathering all the evidence I had to prove that the dog was mine. I had 3 years' worth of time-stamped photos with me and my dog, as well as the microchip registration, with the chip being registered in my name. I told her all of this, but she still refused to return my dog, claiming she was afraid to give her back because the owner is threatening me. Of course, I had proof that I never threatened her. At this point, her actions were blasted on Facebook, Instagram, and Reddit. Update: I'm unsure what else I can do at this point. The court fees alone to try to get my dog back would be overwhelming, and I've already spent over $1,000 trying to find her. Even if I could serve her with court papers, the police will only try 3 times before they say, "Well, you're on your own," and then I would need to hire a private investigator. Right now, my only option seems to be spreading the word even more and getting media attention in hopes it reaches every news and radio station in the Sacramento area. Another update: oh boy, things just took a wild turn. It turns out that the girl who took my dog was with another woman when they found her, and it gets better, they're both escorts. The girl who took my dog, let's call her Blonde Thief, left for San Francisco for work. When she returned home early, she found that the other girl, Red-Haired Thief, was with her boyfriend. And here's the twist: Red-Haired Thief beat up Blonde Thief, which resulted in the police getting involved. The boyfriend and Red-Haired Thief were both arrested, and this was all on public record. Unfortunately, the report didn't include a house address, but I'm keeping a close eye on things. Final update: the Red-Haired Thief actually contacted me and told me that Blonde Thief had taken my dog to her dad's house. So, I went into detective mode, found out who her dad was, and got his legal name, social media, and phone number. I then grabbed one of my friends, who is pretty strong, and we drove an hour to Valley Springs, where her dad lives. We pulled up to the property, and there was my dog, running up to the fence to greet me. I opened the gate, and she tackled me with excitement. I put her in the car and called the cops. The police arrived and tried their best to get her dad to answer the door, but he wasn't home. They took my statement, and I explained everything in detail, including the escort's record. The officers assured me they would catch her, and I would be pressing charges for animal endangerment and grand theft. She's also now facing a 3rd warrant for her arrest. I'm so glad it's finally over, and my dog is thrilled to be back with me. Every day, she seems happier to be home. The next day, I received a message from a friend. It turns out that blonde thief had messaged her, accusing me of harassment and claiming she was going to contact the police. My friend responded, "You do realize the owner came to your dad's house and took her dog back while the police watched, right? The police are pressing charges on you, and they're coming for you. Enjoy jail." The thief then lost her temper, started threatening my friend, and even used some inappropriate slurs. Honestly, after everything that's happened, you'd think she would have learned her lesson by now. Story 4. I needed to make a quick trip outside to buy treats for my demanding cat, who I had completely spoiled. All hail the queen of the house. After getting ready, I headed to the grocery store to pick up her favorite snacks and some more cat food. To give you an idea of my appearance, I was in a gray hoodie, a toque or beanie for my American friends, a Guinness tank top, navy blue pajama pants, black Doc Martens shoes, and carrying an Attack on Titan messenger bag. I definitely did not look like an employee, not even close. I like to call it my bum couture. I also had headphones on, enjoying some music. I walked into the store, jamming out to Slipknot, grabbed a basket, and headed straight for the pet aisle. As I passed the registers, I was suddenly stopped by a woman with neon green hair, probably in her late 40s, wearing a shawl that made her look like she just walked out of a craft show. She immediately began talking to me without even looking in my direction. "Karen, listen here, little man, I'm looking for dish soap, and I have no clue where you people hide that stuff. Show me where it is now." I pulled out one of my headphones, confused. "Me, pardon." Karen groaning in frustration. "Ugh, do you even listen? Where is the dish soap?" She was snapping her fingers at me with every word. At this point, I was already irritated by her attitude. "Me, I know where it is, but with that attitude, I'm not exactly inclined to help you." Karen puffing up indignantly. "Listen here." Me cutting her off. "No, you listen. These people don't get paid enough to deal with your attitude, and I don't work here, so I'm definitely not getting paid enough to deal with your tantrum. How about you look at me? What about my clothing makes you think I work here? What about my outfit says I'm an employee?" Karen taken aback that I had the nerve to talk back. Well, I never. At this point, a helpful employee approached us from customer service. "Employee, what's going on here?" Before anyone else could respond, Karen jumped in. Karen yelling, "This rude person refused to show me where the dish soap was and insulted me. I demand he be written up and fired immediately." Me, "Please page a manager. She's confused and thinks I work here. Oh, and she might need glasses." Employee quickly left to grab the store manager while Karen continued spewing insults at me, convinced I was about to be mega fired or something. I wasn't really paying attention anymore and went back to listening to music. A few minutes later, the store manager and employee returned just as a new song started in my headphones. Store manager, "What's going on here?" Employee sort of filled me in. Karen cutting him off and raising her voice again. "This jerk refused to help me find the dish soap and insulted me. I demand you fire him and compensate me for my trouble." Me, "She thinks I work here. I just want to buy some cat food and treats." Store manager looking at me. "Ma'am, he's clearly a customer. Pajamas are not part of our uniform." At this moment, Karen finally looked at me closely and realized that I was dressed like someone lounging at home, not an employee. She let out a weak, "Oh, apparently." Karen was a known problem at this store because store manager surprised me with his next statement. Store manager firmly and clearly annoyed. "Ma'am, this is the third time this week you've mistreated both staff and customers. Please leave now, and if we see you here again, you'll be trespassed. You are banned from this store indefinitely." Karen, furious, threw her basket on the floor and stormed out, yelling about lawyers and how she'd sue the store. Store manager apologized to me for the incident. but I told him it wasn't a big deal, it had been handled. Employee kindly told me to check out at her register once I had everything I needed, and even gave me a 25% discount on the cat food and treats. In the end, it wasn't such a bad experience. I dealt with a clueless Karen for about 7 minutes, got a discount, and now I'm home with my cat, who's happily snoozing in my lap, reigning over her kingdom as the true queen she is. Story 5. I work for a Spanish company, and I've been with them for about 7-8 years now. Over time, we've gotten to know each other pretty well. I've known and worked closely with a Chief Technology Officer (CTO) for about 10 years. He's a great guy, focused on getting things done efficiently. Even before 2020, the company's work-from-home policy was very relaxed. As long as the work was completed by the required deadline, everything was fine. So when the pandemic hit, the transition to full remote work was as seamless as it could be. In fact, as a company, especially on the tech team, we embraced the situation. We started hiring people from outside the city, offering them salaries that were lower than in the city, but higher than what they would typically earn without relocating. It was a win-win for everyone involved. During that time, I also moved out of the city. In 2021, the company hired a new Chief Executive Officer (CEO), an Englishman who came highly recommended. He worked from his rural house in the English countryside and, at first, seemed like a cool, laid-back guy. However, after the pandemic began to settle down, he started pushing heavily for a return to the office for everyone. He sent out polls and wrote long emails about how being in the office helped foster relationships and other similar reasons. He became quite persistent, even going so far as to complain to the CTO about the lack of office presence. So, whenever the CEO visited Spain, those of us who lived close to the city would go into the office just to keep him happy. Then one day, the CTO decided he had enough of the constant RTO pressure and the CEO's complaints. During a random tech team meeting, the CTO said, "All right, next Tuesday, I want everyone in the office. If you live far away, book a train, drive, whatever you need to do. I'll cover the costs, but be here." And that's exactly what we did. The following Tuesday, every single member of the tech team showed up at the office, even those who had to travel 2 or 3 hours to get there. Guess who didn't show up? Yes, the CEO. The CTO took a picture of all of us in the office and emailed it to the CEO with a message that went something like, "If you can't lead by example, don't push my team to do things that don't work." Afterward, we all went out for a relaxing lunch and enjoyed some beers. The aftermath, the RTO mandate never materialized. About a year later, the CEO was no longer with the company. We ended up closing the office entirely since everyone now works remotely full-time. To top it all off, the CTO is now both the Chief Technology Officer and the Acting Chief Executive Officer, and things have been running smoothly ever since. Story 6. This incident happened last year. Looking back, I do feel a little bad for the professor. He wasn't the worst I've ever had, and he was dealing with a university that was in disarray behind the scenes while leading an untested new course. That being said, I'm paying quite a lot for this education, and he had quite the attitude about the situation. So there's that. It was a history course, and one of the assignments was a group project in which we had to present in front of the class. The presentation was part of a 3-hour seminar held in a lecture hall, with the last hour reserved for 2 groups to present, each getting 30 minutes. After each presentation, there would be a question and answer session, likely to keep us alert. The professor made it clear that we had to pick the week and topic for our presentation, and that was final. It was first come, first served, and if you missed your slot, you'd get a 0. It seemed reasonable at the time, although I wasn't a fan of his tone, but I let it slide. I was fortunate with the group I was assigned. They were a great bunch of guys, and working with them was a breeze. We picked a week that worked well for all of our schedules and spent the lead-up carefully perfecting the presentation. We even used a stopwatch to time ourselves and brought in outside help to ask us unpredictable questions. Everything was going smoothly. Except for one problem, we were scheduled to present in week 5. and by then, a troubling pattern had emerged. During the seminars in weeks 2, 3, and 4, the first group always ran over time, and the second group was left with, at best, 20 minutes. The stress on the second group was always visible. As week 5 approached, my group started to worry that all our hard work would be for nothing. I decided to take a chance and asked the professor if we could go first. After all, we were confident we had timed our presentation to exactly 30 minutes. I figured the worst he could say was no. Right before class started, I approached the professor and asked him if we could present first since we were sure of our timing. In front of everyone, he berated me. He didn't raise his voice, but the podium was near the door, and people were filing into the room. He told me not to ask such a foolish question and sent me back to my seat. I sat down, feeling embarrassed and fuming for the next 2 hours. As expected, the other group went first, and sure enough, they ran long. My group and I exchanged worried glances, but the professor was too focused on the first group to notice. At the 50-minute mark, the first group was finally wrapping up. My group members were panicking internally. Then, the professor stood up, gave a polite round of applause, and said, "Well, I guess we're finishing early today, huh?" It was like a scene out of a courtroom drama. The 4 of us stood up in unison, demanding to know what was happening. The professor, confused, asked what was going on since he couldn't hear us clearly from the back. We were all talking at once, so I stormed down the steps like it was my final stand. I approached him, in the same tone of voice, right by the door where students were leaving, and reminded him that we were scheduled to present that day. What?" he stammered. It turned out he had completely forgotten that we were supposed to present, which explained his earlier reaction. I told him we were either presenting now, to an almost empty room, or he was giving us full marks. The poor man tried to argue. He insisted we hadn't signed up for that week we had, then suggested we present the following week, which wasn't possible because 2 of our group members would be away for their teaching placement. Finally, he claimed he had another appointment to attend, not our problem. He had no choice but to deal with it. After making a phone call to what I assume was his next appointment, he stayed. He looked pale as he stood there, knowing he had no way out. I'll never forget the look on his face. So, we presented to an almost empty lecture hall, with just the professor and 2 students who had stuck around, likely for the entertainment. And to top it off, we received a great grade. Story 7. When I was 3 years old, my grandparents passed away. They set up a savings account in my name, which was intended to be accessed by me when I turned 21. By the time I reached that age, the account had just over $300,000 in it. My grandparents left me a letter expressing their wish that I share the money fairly with any other Smith-Jones children, meaning my full siblings. My dad's last name is Smith, and my mom's last name is Jones. They left it up to me to assess what was fair. However, I never had full siblings. I do have 2 half-brothers, Mac and Joe Smith, who are my dad's children with my stepmom. Legally, I didn't have to give Mac or Joe any money since my grandparents' instructions were specific to full siblings. But I have always seen Mac and Joe as my brothers, and I wanted to honor the spirit of what my grandparents would have wanted. Therefore, I decided to divide the money equally, giving each of us $100,000, and I planned that once Mac, the youngest, turned 21, we could split any remaining money. When I turned 21, my dad suggested I use my $100,000 to buy a house. I found a house I loved for $130,000, but couldn't secure a mortgage. Dad suggested I borrow $30,000 from the savings account, and I did so, figuring I could repay it before Mac turned 21. I've been repaying the amount, and the account should now hold $208,000, but because of my withdrawal, it only has $195,000, meaning I still owe $13,000. Recently, Joe turned 21, and when I gave him his $100,000, he noticed there was less in the account than expected. I explained the situation and told him I planned to repay the full amount before Mac, who is now 19, turns 21. Joe then told Mac about it, and both of them accused me of stealing from them. They demanded I repay the $13,000 plus $3,000 in interest they believed they would have earned, and they wanted it all paid by this summer, giving me less than 6 months to make up the difference. I agreed to repay them, but over 2 years as I had originally planned. The boys then wrote up a contract stating I had 6 months to repay the full amount. When I went to sign it, I realized it wasn't what we had agreed on, so I refused. They insisted that I figure it out, claiming they were entitled to the money and that they would seek legal advice if I didn't comply. Later that day, I received an email, clearly written by them, threatening to sue me for the $16,000 plus whatever remained in the account, along with additional claims for damages and emotional distress. At this point, I had already given Joe about $50,000 of his $100,000 because he wanted it in installments. I responded that legally, they were never entitled to any of the money in the first place. Given their behavior, I decided that the $50,000 I had already given Joe was fair, and that would be all he was getting. After that, I blocked their calls and messages, but they didn't stop. They turned to social media, claiming I was trying to cheat them out of their inheritance and encouraging our extended family to harass me. For the most part, it worked, and I received numerous messages from family members. Then, I got a message from a man named Chris Smith. Chris introduced himself as my half-brother. He was 27, and although I had never met him, he sent me photos of himself as a child with our dad, our grandparents, and me. Chris told me he also had a savings account with $150,000 in it, along with a letter from our grandparents stating that the money was to be shared fairly among our dad's illegitimate children. Chris revealed that we also had another half-sibling, an 18-year-old. He had been searching for me for a while, but only found me because of Joe's social media posts, which had tagged me. We consulted a solicitor to clarify the situation. Since Mac and Joe are legitimate children, they aren't entitled to anything from Chris' fund, and since they are my half-siblings, they aren't entitled to anything from my fund either. I formally sent Mac and Joe a letter telling them to stop harassing me, to stop posting about me online, and to enjoy the $50,000 Joe had already received because that's all they were getting. After receiving the letter, Chris received a message from our dad, asking if Mac and Joe could have some of his funds. Chris declined and informed our dad that we had met. I then told Mac and Joe about Chris and our other half-sibling, with Chris' permission. It seems my grandparents, knowing about Chris before they passed, had set up 2 separate funds, one for the children my dad had with my mother, his wife at the time, and one for the children he had outside of his marriage. This setup was likely to ensure that no one tried to take advantage of anyone else's inheritance out of hurt feelings. I'm receiving a lot of criticism from the family, but I'm standing firm in my decision. The boys have realized that I won't back down, and it seems like this has caused some serious conflict at their home. Joe now has his money and has no intention of sharing it with Mac, which has left Mac feeling betrayed. Additionally, my stepmom apparently didn't know about the other half-siblings, including the fact that my half-sister was born after she and my dad got married. As a result, she's made my dad move into a hotel. It seems like my dad is now searching for a long-term living arrangement outside of their home because it doesn't look like she's letting him move back in. Dad has been pleading with me to reconsider, but honestly, I'm done with all of them except for Chris and my sister. Story 8. I was the smallest kid in class, and as a freshman in high school, one of the teachers had us give answers to a problem on the board. The task wasn't just to solve a word math problem, but to give a short lecture on how to do it. The catch: we had to get our classmates' attention first. I tried calling out. No response. My voice was too soft. I tried again, louder this time, but I was ignored once more. I thought about crossing my arms and tapping my foot like teachers do to get attention, but that wasn't going to work for a 95-pound kid like me, so I skipped that. Next, I moved to Plan C, go nuclear. I knew how to make the chalk scream. I grabbed 2 pieces of chalk, held them lightly at the back, pressed them to the board at a low angle, and tilted them up just enough to make that awful screeching noise. I started at one end of the long chalkboard, both pieces in hand, and let them rip. Asterisk screech, asterisk. And remember, this was happening with 2 pieces of chalk at once. Asterisk screech, asterisk. I turned around to look. The whole class was in shock, covering their ears, eyes squeezed shut in pain. I couldn't help but grin. The teacher? She was laughing, even while covering her own ears. I turned back to the board, calmly worked through the problem, and explained it. Everyone was suddenly quiet, sitting up straight and paying full attention. Finally, this was how it should be. I distinctly remember one young lady with her hands clamped over her ears, her face scrunched up as she mouthed, "Oh, whoa." The next week, it was my turn again. I walked to the board, picked up 2 pieces of chalk, and pressed them to the board. As soon as I did, I turned around, and to my surprise, everyone was already paying attention. That same young lady, who later became a professor, looked at me and said, "Please, don't do that again." Turns out, that lesson left quite an impression.